Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's military chief has told soldiers occupying the Gaza Strip that the yellow line dividing the Palestinian territory under President Trump's ceasefire plan will become a new border for Israel. The comments by Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir come despite a provision in the October ceasefire deal stating that, quote, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza, unquote. Such a move would give Israel control of more than half of Gaza's territory, including farmland and the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Meanwhile, a new report by Reporters Without Borders finds Israel's killed more journalists in 2025 than any other country for the third year running. The report found Israel's military liable for the deaths of 29 Palestinian journalists among 67 journalists killed around the world this year. In occupied East Jerusalem, the United Nations has condemned a raid by Israeli forces on the headquarters of the UN's Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, known as UNRWA. A spokesperson for the UN Secretary General said the raid directly violates international law.
Police motorcycles as well as trucks and forklifts were brought in, and all communications were cut. Furniture, IT equipment, and other property was seized, and the UN flag was pulled down and replaced by the Israeli flag. This compound remains United Nations premises and is inviolable and immune from any other form of interference.
The U.S. Supreme Court signaled Monday it's prepared to make it easier for President Trump to fire independent government officials despite laws barring the president from removing them without cause. On Monday, the court heard oral arguments in the case of Federal Trade Commission member Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, who was fired by the White House in March. The court's right-wing majority cast doubt on a 90-year-old precedent known as Humphrey's executor, which grants a president the power to fire a board member only for, quote, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office, unquote. Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned that move would, quote, destroy the structure of government, unquote, while Justice Elena Kagan warned it would grant the president near unlimited power.
So the result of what you want is that the president is going to have massive, unchecked, uncontrolled power, not only to do traditional execution, but to make law through legislative and adjudicative frameworks.
A ruling in the Supreme Court case is expected by June. Until then, the court has allowed the White House's firing of Rebecca Kelly Slaughter and other commissioners to remain in effect. President Trump has walked back his remarks last week when asked if he would release video showing a series of strikes on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean on September 2nd. Previously, Trump said he had, quote, no problem releasing the footage. But speaking to reporters Monday, Trump defended Defense Secretary Hegseth while insulting ABC's Rachel Scott, who pressed him on whether he would release the full video.
Admitted to releasing the full video?
Didn't I just tell you that?
You said that it was up to Secretary Hegseth.
You're the most obnoxious reporter in the whole place. Let me just tell you, you are an obnoxious, actually a terrible reporter. And it's always the same thing with you. I told you, whatever Pete Hegseth wants to do is okay with me.
Recently, President Trump called CBS's Nancy Cora stupid, Katie Rogers from the New York Times ugly. And when Catherine Lucy of Bloomberg News asked him about releasing the Epstein files, Trump told her, quiet, piggy. Despite claiming to target alleged drug boats in the Pacific and the Caribbean, President Trump has used his power to pardon about 100 people accused of drug-related crimes. That's according to a Washington Post analysis. Just last week, Trump pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was sentenced to 45 years in prison for conspiring to distribute more than 400 tons of cocaine in the United States. On Monday night, the Honduran Attorney General announced he'd instructed his government and Interpol to arrest Hernandez. Meanwhile, a 2016 video unearthed by CNN of Defense Secretary Hegseth shows him repeatedly warning the U.S. military should refuse unlawful orders
If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief.
Republican lawmakers have unveiled a bill to authorize $901 billion in military spending for the next fiscal year. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the National Defense Authorization Act would, quote, ensure our military forces remain the most lethal in the world, unquote. In a statement, Public Citizen's Robert Weissman responded, quote, the last person who should be entrusted with an even bigger budget is the dangerous and lawless Pete Hegseth, as Hegseth illegally targets civilian boats near Venezuela with expensive Hellfire missiles, wastefully and recklessly deploys the National Guard in cities around the country, and teases an unconstitutional and costly war. Congress should refuse to add a penny to his budget, unquote. Meanwhile, lawmakers have attached a provision to the NDAA that would withhold money from Hegseth's travel budget if the Pentagon refuses to hand over video of the September 2nd boat strike. President Trump's announced a $12 billion aid package to farmers struggling from the devastating effects of his tariffs. Farm bankruptcies rose by nearly 50% this year compared to last. President Trump's tariffs on China cut its imports of U.S. soybeans to zero before a deal was reached in October. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon criticized the bailout for farmers, saying, quote, instead of proposing government handouts, Donald Trump should end his destructive tariff spree so American farmers can compete and win on a level playing field, he said. In Minnesota, students and staff at Augsburg University in Minneapolis say federal immigration agents pointed guns at a crowd that gathered to protest the arrest of an undergraduate student Saturday. In a statement, the university wrote that the ICE agents lacked a signed judicial warrant, which is required for them to enter private buildings. It was just one of several reports of ICE agents physically threatening and wrongfully detaining people swept up in what ICE is calling Operation Metro Surge, targeting Minnesota's Somali community, which President Trump has described in a racist tirade as garbage. In Washington state, Democratic Senator Patty Murray is condemning an incident where ICE agents released an attack dog on one of her constituents last month in Vancouver. According to Senator Murray, Wilmer Toledo Martinez suffered horrific injuries after an ICE agent lured him out of his home before violently arresting him. His neighbor, John Williams Sr., witnessed the attack. He spoke to TV station KGW.
His wife screaming, the kids in the car screaming, and I'm glad his 7-year-old daughter wasn't here, the 2- and 3-year-old was here. And we were trying to ask what's going on, and they're telling her to get back, or we're gonna sick the dog on you. I never saw nothing like this in my life, close up with no one, you know, and it hurts. It really hurts, man, especially happening to a young man like that, man. You know, a good, honest young man.
Toledo Martinez was hospitalized, received stitches for gruesome injuries. His attorney says ICE delayed his medical care for several hours and that a prescription for antibiotics was never filled by staff at the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, where he's been held since his arrest. In a statement, Senator Murray said, quote, this should shock the conscience of every one of us. I do not want to live in an America where federal agents can sick attack dogs on peaceful residents with impunity and face no consequences, the senator said. California's Department of Justice has announced a new online portal for members of the public to share videos, photos, and other evidence documenting unlawful activity by ICE agents. This follows similar efforts in other states, including Illinois and New York. Meanwhile, the maker of the smartphone app ICE Block has sued the Trump administration on First Amendment grounds after the Justice Department pressured Apple to remove its software from its App Store. Before Apple banned the software in October, ICE Block allowed users to anonymously track reported sightings of ICE agents. A dozen former FBI agents filed a lawsuit accusing FBI Director Kash Patel and other officials of unlawfully firing them for kneeling during a 2020 protest after the death of George Floyd. The lawsuit claims the agents knelt to, quote, diffuse a volatile situation, not as an expressive political act, unquote. Meanwhile, Patel reportedly yelled at agents on the security detail for his girlfriend to drive her allegedly drunk friend home. This comes as a leaked report compiled by retired and active-duty FBI special agents and analysts called the agency under Patel a, quote, rudderless ship and chronically underperforming. Paramount Skydance has launched a nearly $78 billion hostile takeover offer for Warner Bros. Discovery just days after Warner Bros. Accepted a $72 billion deal from Netflix. Paramount said it secured funding commitments from the sovereign wealth funds of Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and Qatar, along with support from Affinity Partners, the private equity firm run by Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law. President Trump reportedly favors Paramount to acquire Warner Bros. Discovery and remarked over the weekend he'll intervene in the federal review process of Netflix's proposed deal. We'll have more on this story after headlines. President Trump's accused his political enemies, including Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, of mortgage fraud for claiming more than one primary residence on her loans. Now a ProPublica investigation finds President Trump himself did the same thing in the 1990s when he took out 2 Florida mortgages and claimed each home would be his main residence. According to ProPublica, President Trump never lived in the 2 Florida houses and instead used them as rental properties. Kathleen Engel, a Suffolk University law professor and leading expert on mortgage finance, told ProPublica, quote, given Trump's position on situations like this, he's going to either need to fire himself or refer himself to the Department of Justice. Trump has deemed that this type of misrepresentation is sufficient to preclude someone from serving the country, unquote. Fighting between Thailand and Cambodia has erupted again after Thailand launched airstrikes Monday along its disputed border with Cambodia. A Thai soldier and 4 Cambodian civilians were killed in the renewed fighting as both sides accused each other of breaching a ceasefire deal brokered by President Trump in October. Earlier this year, at least 48 people were killed and 300,000 forced to flee their homes in the 5-day conflict. This is the spokesperson for the Cambodian Defense Ministry.
The second invasion activity by the Thai side shows clearly their intention to grab their neighbor's land, using a unilateral map and using force to change borders.
And here in New York, the longtime peace activist Cora Weiss has died at the age of 91. After decades of advocacy demanding civil rights, nuclear disarmament, gender equality, and the abolition of war. In the 1960s, Cora Weiss was a national leader of Women's Strike for Peace, which played a major role in bringing about the end of nuclear testing in the atmosphere. She organized protests against the Vietnam War and served as president of the Hague Appeal for Peace. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize multiple times. Cora Weiss also served for decades on the board of Downtown Community Television. She last appeared on Democracy Now! In 2022.
Climate change and nuclear weapons are the apocalyptic twins, and we have to prevent one and get rid of the other. We have to abolish nuclear weapons immediately. There should be no question about it anymore. They're too dangerous and unnecessary. And who wants to destroy the world and the lives of everybody in it?
Cora Weiss's husband, Peter Weiss, the well-known human rights attorney, died several weeks ago, just shy of his 100th birthday. Cora Weiss died yesterday on Peter Weiss's 100th birthday. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.